Yeah, very much so. With us is Matthew Lesh, who's Head of Research at the Adam Smith Institute. Matthew, thanks for coming in. I suppose it's a sign of great success when you're ahead of the regulators, because that essentially is what's happened here. But how much of a break is this issue over use of and regulation of likely to have, do you think?
Well, just like a lot of other new transport technologies, from traditional car ride sharing, even to historically the bicycle, there is opposition, there is concern, there are questions raised about safety. What we're seeing right across the world is actually quite helpful for that. A lot of regulators and a lot of cities are working out ways to ensure that they're safely regulated, that they're providing a useful service that can reduce carbon emissions, that can reduce congestion, that are kind of part of the mobility challenge as we try to reduce emissions and try to address population growth in cities.
So it's difficult to imagine it's not going to carry on growing, but that sort of sense of control, it's a bit Wild Westy at the moment, isn't it, out there, for not least for pedestrians who are not used to these things, and they do hurtle along.
They do, and they can go up to 15 to 20 miles an hour, so there is some real speed there. I think particularly for regulators and for cities, it's about getting the appropriate regime in place that can both enable the technology, because this is fantastic technology. 1/3 of e-scooter rides replace car trips, and that's millions of fewer rides. That's millions of fewer trips in cars. At the other hand, you need to ensure that people are safe on these. Broadly, the research suggests that they kind of have a similar safety issues to bicycles. So you probably recommend people to wear helmets. You want to be careful when riding. You want to look out for them. That's no reason to stop them being used altogether.
No, bikes and electric bikes brings a whole another issue in as well.
Yes.
But I think you had a point.
Yeah, the point about the investment in them, because it's easy to think of this as a Silicon Valley, venture at a plaything. But actually, if people have pensions and savings invested in venture capital funds, they could well have money invested in these e-scooter firms, and this regulation could cause some shifts in what that's worth.
It absolutely could, and I think we have to really understand the scale of e-scooters. This is probably the fastest growing transport technology in history. Bird, the pioneers of rental e-scooters, are the fastest company in history to reach unicorn status. That's worth over $1 billion. The industry could be worth as much as $500 billion by 2030. So the regulations that are in place could potentially limit some of the growth in certain cities. There's been a lot of efforts to try to limit numbers of e-scooters to ensure they don't clutter up the sidewalks and the footpaths. And I think that's something that the companies are trying to deal with as they move into new cities. In the UK in particular, they're actually not legal to use on public roads, on sidewalks, on cycle paths just yet. So then there's a responsibility to create a kind of an ideal type regulatory regime, rather than what's happened in some cities in the US, which is the e-scooter companies have just shown up one day and put them all over the city.
It's interesting. It's sort of crept up on us, and I hadn't realised the sheer scale of growth of the business. Matthew, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you.